listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
GM Shuffle, we welcome you in on this Thursday. Michael Lombardi, the big guy. I'm Patrick Meagher. We say hi, and we've got a good one to kick off Week 14. Of course, 6 teams on bye, Michael, but you do have Ford Field, Detroit, Michigan. The 9-3 Packers shout to Big Daddy against my Detroit Lions at 11-1. This number right now, remember, open 5.5, Michael, all the way down to 3, the key number at a couple of shops, most showing 3.5 with Detroit laying it. But we do have a good one for your buddy Al Michaels tonight.
You know, and he can put us, maybe he'll put a tie back on. We can get some tie out of Al. We've been going with the sweater thing, you know, covering up and try to stay warm. You know, I think to me, maybe we'll get a tie, but I didn't realize they fly back out after the game. Al's on Air Michaels after the game. I didn't realize that. He doesn't even spend the night. He's back in L.A. before the game. Probably they clear out the stadium. So I think it's going to be fun. It's interesting how we have changed as a league so much. You know, everybody talks about air the ball out. These are two teams that are so similar. Both of them are in the top 5 in rushing attempts per game. And both of them are in the top 5 in the bottom 5 in passing attempts per game. But where they excel, and which is probably the most important thing of all, is they're really good at being able to make throws down. They're tremendous at yards per attempt. And so both teams make explosive plays in the passing game. They control the game. I think this is going to be an 8 or 9 possession game. I think both teams will eat up the clock. Detroit, as you know, Patrick, being a Detroit Lions fan, I mean, this team is one of the best teams in the league by far if they can get all their players back on the field. They have so many guys on injured reserve. You know, when you total it all up, they have 17, 13 of them are guys that they really count on, and that takes a wear and tear on your depth. Tonight, they won't have DJ Reader, which really hurts them at defensive tackle.
You know, it really is. They're 11-1, and we were talking about the NFC getting that 1 seed at plus 240 for the Eagles. I think there's something to it because, Michael, this injury situation, Aiden Hutchinson, Kaminsky, Davenport, all on season-ending IR. Now, you just mentioned Reader, Pascal, who's a big deal. Onwuzurike, I always mispronounce his name, but he's out for tonight. And then you go to the offense with Decker continues to be out at left tackle. Like, this is starting to add up for the Lions to become a big story.
And what happens, it's a culmination of losing guys. Now the backups have to play 20 plays as opposed to 15 or 30 plays as opposed to 15, and that wears you down. And hopefully they'll get Carlton Davis back. But the one thing about this team, and when you lose 2 starting defensive linemen going into this game, and then all of a sudden you don't have Hutchinson. So now you've got a lot of depth issues, and they're signing guys off of the other team's practice. Signed Jonah Williams off the Rams practice squad, Miles Adams off Seattle's practice squad. That affects you. It really does. And, you know, and losing Decker, to me, I hope they don't move Sewell to left tackle, though he could handle it. He's one of the best players in the league. But this run game is so predicated on being a right-handed run team that I think, to me, if you move them over to the left, now you're changing a lot of different things. It's a little bit like what's happened in Kansas City when they moved McDuffie from the slot corner to the outside corner. He ended up not being as effective outside, and now they're weak in 2 spots. You're better off helping Skipper at left tackle. You know you've got to chip over there. Know you've got to take care of the edge of Green Bay and see where that goes. But I think this is everybody wants to play the over in this game tonight, and I think these are games, Patrick, where it's a playoff atmosphere. It's a playoff game, and we know playoff games tend to go under because of the control of the clock, and these 2 teams are going to run the football. I think and Campbell, I want to control the pace of the game. I can't let this get to a track meet. I don't have enough healthy bodies to keep chasing Jordan Love around, which to me, Patrick, is the biggest question mark going in the game. How good is Jordan Love? How good is he this year? And can he stop throwing the ball inaccurately? I mean, he's had many games below 60% completion. Now, he's great at throwing it down the field, but he's got to get more consistent and play. And he's had opportunities where he's thrown it. Or San Francisco had their hands on too many footballs, but they dropped them. That can't happen tonight.
Yeah, no Romeo Doubs for the Packers. Alexander up in the air at cornerback. The irony of bringing up Love here is, remember, maybe the greatest game he's played as a pro was on a Thursday last year, Thanksgiving at Ford Field, where he was awesome. So now a fast forward a week from Thanksgiving on Thursday at Ford Field. We'll see what happens with Jordan Love. The game itself, you're so right about the Lions and coming off that run. Goff is so good off the run with the play action. So important here. Down to 3.5. Do you agree with the movement coming off that 5.5 going the Packers' way?
Yeah, I think the only reason this movement's occurring is because of the injuries. I think it's hard to get, it's hard to understand, Green Bay, they're a good team. They're not going to have Zaire Alexander. They won't have their rookie inside linebacker, so they got some injuries too. But look, these teams the Green Bay's a really good pass protection team. And Detroit struggled to get pressure on Caleb Williams at the end of that game, and he was lighting them up in the back end. Now, getting Carlton Davis back certainly will help, but these Green Bay receivers can get open one-on-one. The problem with Green Bay receivers, they lead the league in drop passes, right? And so that becomes a real issue. And they're 23rd in the league in penalties. So when you add drop passes, negative plays, you add penalties, push the ball back, all of a sudden now you start to fall behind because this Green Bay team is really, really good. It's one of my favorite stats in all of football. They're really good at being able to get first downs and 2 downs. And so when you look over these two teams, again, one of my favorite stats in football is how many yards do you give up in the red zone? Like what do you do in terms of can you run the ball in or do you have to throw it in? And everybody says, well, look, inside the 20 rushing, number 2 team in the league, Detroit Lions. So Green Bay, they're 10th in that area. Defensively, Detroit's the 5th best team in defending the run inside that area, whereas Green Bay's 15th. I think those two stats, when you're breaking down teams, are critical for any coach because when you can't run the ball in the end zone and that you force teams to throw it, as Brady said on his show, that you got all these players trying to hover around in a small condensed area, it becomes very difficult. That to me is the essence of this game. Is both teams can run it in for scores. Both teams can stop you from running into scores, which, again, lends itself to a lower scoring game.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think both teams are going to try to control clock. I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Josh Jacobs. He got 19 carries against Miami. Again, he didn't run it well. San Francisco, they gave him the ball 26 times with that depleted front of Detroit and linebackers as well. I think Josh Jacobs is going to be a big component tonight for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, he has to be. Look, these are two teams. Like, it's so interesting about the NFL now. We talk about the R game and the spread game, and we're in shotgun and all that. And the teams that are dominating are the teams that are running. The Eagles, the last 5 weeks of the NFL season, they've won a 5-game heater. They've run for more yards than they passed for. And all the teams that are in the top of the league are teams that are running the football. Their rush per attempts are higher. I think that's so critical. Right? I mean, when you go through it and you look at all these teams in terms of the percentage of who's calling runs and who's calling passes, look, I'm not saying, look, I get this. You have to running the football. All running the football does is allow you to kind of get in position. You've got to cash in. You got to score in the red zone. But the play selection, think about this, Patrick. The number 1 team in terms of rush percentage in the first, Green Bay. Number 3, Detroit. Number 4, Philadelphia. Right? I mean, they are coming out to run the ball. They're not trying to establish the run. They're trying to establish control of the game. And I think that's really important. And that's one of the reasons why they've been so effective when you break them down. Look, every team that's in the top 10 in that area usually having the ability to do it. Now, Green Bay, I'm trying to find them here Green Bay's the number 1 team in the National Football League in running the football in the first half. So we got 2 teams tonight. Washington's 2nd, Detroit's 3rd. They're going to run it.
Yep. The running back is hot again in 2024. You love to see things come full circle. So That is a Thursday night football, 3.5. Michael mentioned the total, a big one at 51 tonight. Ford Field, a good one. NFC North, a great division. NFL news and notes, GM Shuffle presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. I want to save the Bears for the next segment. Let's do this. Azeez Al-Shaair suspended 3 games for his hit on Trevor Lawrence. A guy you know very well, Nick Caserio, who runs the Texans, was not happy, came out and called it BS, said, quite frankly, it's embarrassing. Your take on the 3-game suspension here for Shaair?
I think this suspension is more about his behavior after the hit than it is the hit.
Agreed.
I think he was out of control. I think that's a black eye for the league. They don't want that. And I think the way he behaved and he was going back after it and they had to restrain him and they barely could get him off the field. I disagree with Nick in the sense that his behavior after the play was so bad and it was a black
He was
eye on the
unhinged.
league. He was unhinged, right? And he was out of control. Look, I agree. Brady's right. Quarterbacks have to slide earlier. And this freedom that we're giving the quarterbacks to slide as late as they want, I don't know what the league wants them to do. Like when you start to go tackle the quarterback, how do you stop your body in midair? I don't know how the league expects you to do that. So, look, if the guy's going to go down and he's going to slide at the last possible second, I think that becomes a little bit of an issue. But I don't understand how you could complain about it. His behavior was horrible, I thought. And I think at the end of the day, the league got to do something. I thought they might reduce it to a 2-game. But look, I think Nick has to defend his player. The kid's one of their better players. He's an explosive player for them. They need him to be a good team on defense. They need him out there. They've really been struggling, the Texans, during the course of the year, the second half of the season. I mean, Mac Jones moved the ball up and down the field on him in the final 2 drives of the game. Mac Jones going into that game scored 13 points. So I think to me that's going to be that's the issue. But I agree. I agree with the suspension. I don't agree with Nick that the kid didn't pull off and he led with his forearm.
Yeah, man, you nailed it. His demonstrative behavior after the foul was huge. Also, he had a track record, Jair. So I think a lot of this was what had happened before and then what happened after the hit, which was egregious, if we're being honest. Okay, so there is Jair with the 3-game suspension. NFL news and notes, GM shuffle. When we come back, the Bears are going to have a head coaching opening. Is it the most coveted job in the NFL offseason? We'll come back and discuss here at GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
GM Shuffle, of course, NFL news and notes presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. The big guy, Michael Lombardi. We've got a good one to kick off Week 14 on Thursday with Detroit hosting Green Bay. 3.5, 51 on the total. Question, is the Bears' job the most coveted by potential head coaching candidates? Now, we should talk about your boy who is the CEO of the Bears. His name is Kevin Warren. For those that don't know, Kevin Warren used to run the Big Ten. He and Jim Harbaugh have a history. Jim Harbaugh wanted to coach the Chicago Bears. Who didn't want him? Kevin Warren, Michael Lombardi. Probably botched that one.
Yep. And look, you're going to work for Kevin Warren. I mean, look, I used to say this to Al Davis all the time. Everybody wants to be like you. Everybody wants to run the team and not be known that they're running the team. Mr. Murphy up at Green Bay, that's what he's done most of his career up there. He's run the team, but he tried not to have it. And this is what Warren's doing. It's as clear as the nose on my face. I mean, Warren's running the Bears. He can put Ryan Poles out there. Ryan Poles is too young to run anything. Let alone, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to youth, because I don't, but Ryan needs help, right? And so you could sit there and say Ryan's going to lead the search. You're leading the search. Just take accountability for it, right? Everybody in Minnesota knows this is what you've been angling to get. And I think to me that he puts it out there that, he's going to let Poles run it. Poles can, let's be honest here. The whole team has been built backwards. It's an outside-in team in Chicago in bad weather. So they gave him the stay and they didn't do anything. I mean, everybody forgets. I got more crap last year because I said they should have just waited to sign Montez Sweat as opposed to giving up a second-round pick. I mean, the defense needs defensive linemen. They're not a great team. I know they have this great perception out there by the media because they have great skill. That doesn't make you a great team. It doesn't make you a great team. They have no power. And so Warren turning down Jim is not surprising. I mean, it's the same stupid decision. Look, there's always opportunities that come around when you're a decision maker that you have to understand that this is the moment. Once in a lifetime happens once in a lifetime. Jim Harbaugh wanting to leave Michigan. If you're a Chicago Bear fan, you make that decision. And sometimes it's a hard decision. Would it have been hard to fire Eberflus? Sure, last year. because he did bring the team back. But you're in charge of the franchise. You're in charge of running something bigger than yourself. You have to bury your ego. The guy's a great coach. He was a former Bear player. I mean, the same thing happened at the Raiders. I mean, Mark Davis is sitting there. He has a gift in his hand, just a complete gift. The guy would have taken the Raider job over the Charger job 10 times out of 10. You could have had him come in there, but you decided to listen to Max Crosby, and now you even listen to Devontae Adams, who's not even on the team anymore, and you could have had Jim Harbaugh. So, look, Warren's going to pick somebody that they can control. I can just promise you that. I don't give a crap if he says it's the best job in the league. I would bet Thomas Brown, because I think they're going to win a couple games down the stretch. You're going to get the consensus and Caleb Williams is going to say, hey, I want this guy to be my coach, and Warren's going to say, okay, he's your coach. Because they want somebody that Warren's going to have an influence on. This crap Warren's just there to build a stadium is crap. Everybody wants to be responsible for the winning. Everybody wants to be responsible for the winning. They want to stand there and they want to take the ballots for the winning. They don't want any blame when they lose. Right. Like, okay, why didn't you fire Eberflus last year? Why'd you have to wait till in season to fire him? Eberflus was the same coach he was. But, now you're okay to fire him. Your job is to make decisions beforehand. So, look, I think it's comical, and I just think, to me, Jim Harbaugh, the fact that this story broke, everybody in the league knew Jim wanted that job. It just broke now, but everybody in the league knew Warren wasn't going to let him come in there.
Yeah, Warren said that Ryan Poles he's going to remain the GM, have final decision on the next head coach, which Michael just told you. That's not the case. Warren is puppeteering the situation in Chicago. I want to talk about Harbaugh in just a second here, but quickly, of course, you mentioned Brown, who's going to be the interim head coach. They're going to travel to San Francisco. We'll get to San Francisco. They have injury news. But the next head coach in Chicago, it feels like it's going to be an offensive-minded person, obviously, with Caleb Williams. Do you think it's Ben Johnson or Kingsbury?
I don't see why Ben Johnson would take this job. And I think Ben Johnson is going to be really careful. I think Ben Johnson knows this, right? Because, look, when you go through the history of the Bear franchise, like, what makes you believe that their franchise history, I know they've got a proud franchise, but, they haven't been to the playoffs in 4 years, right? The last time they went to a conference championship game was 2010. They haven't been to the Super Bowl since 2006. They've been through a bunch of different coaches. Like, organizationally, is the structure right? You're working for the president, and now you're working for Poles. If you're Ben Johnson, you want to have layers upon layers? I think that's a little bit far-fetched. I don't see Kingsbury being in the cycle. I know he coached Caleb, so there's a distinction, but I think it'll be somebody that they feel like they have an opportunity. That's why I think Thomas Brown has the best chance to get this job, because he's coaching the quarterback. He has clearly improved the offense since he took over from Shane Waldron. Clearly improved it, right?
Yep.
And if they do that, and he's talking about alignment, all the things he's talking about the press conference, to me, if I was sitting there listening to him, and I'm saying this guy's got a chance to be the head coach. Plus, when you hire the interim, he's thankful to get the job, and because Warren's going to control him. Like, I don't understand how anybody's going to give the authority to run a billion-dollar industry to Ryan Poles. I just don't. This is not disrespectful to Ryan. Ryan's never really been in this chair before. This is a really hard job. A really hard job to see the organization, to predict the future, to anticipate problems. This is a really hard job. It's not pick a player. This is what happens so often. We got to pick this player. No, when you're the general manager and you have all this authority, you're about, how do I help the head coach become a better head coach? How do I get player development? How do I get the player development demanding from the head coach, the assistants? It's a huge job. Poles might be basically, he could be the best director of college scouting. Maybe he is. I don't know that. But the reality of it is, this is a bigger job than what his experience level tells me.
It reminds me, and you can say what you want on this, but your time in Cleveland, when the Haslams and the Layers and you guys were hiring a head coach. We've talked about this in the past. And you, correct me if I'm wrong, you started pointing to Shanahan. You ended up going with the DC. I can't remember the name right now. But my greater point is, when there's so many layers where you have to navigate, it's not just about football decisions. It just gets messy. There's no direction. Like what's happening with the Giants right now.
We could have hired Harbaugh. Harbaugh was available when I was in Cleveland. He was available. It was his last year. He knew he was in trouble because Balke was forcing him out. There was a conflict between him and Trent Balke in San Francisco. We had an opportunity, but there was vetoes within the building. And so nobody thought he was a good coach. And some people in the building didn't think he was a good coach. They ran the numbers and said, well, this is it, which is, to me, ridiculous. Jimmy Haslam knows that I was sitting there saying he's the best coach we could possibly ever get. But we never made a move for him. They would have taken not a lot to get him. Now, he didn't want to come, so that kind of eliminated all that. But, yeah, I think, to me, anytime you first of all, what are we looking for? I mean, if I asked Ryan Poles, what are the 5 traits of leadership that are would most benefit the Chicago Bears? I don't think he could tell me that. How could he? He's going to rely on people that he knows to tell him what this person is, not sit in a room and interview the person and say, okay, here's the situation. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what I want. Okay, who are you going to hire for defense coordinator? That's going to be the big question. Who are you going to hire? I want to know, who are you going to demand from? Are you going to coach the coaches? Because here's the element that people miss, and they miss this in college too. All these colleges now have the salary cap, right? And they're all talking about, we got to hire a salary cap guy to come in. Okay, great. You hire a salary cap to come in. Who's going to demand that the coaches develop the players? Because the salary cap doesn't work without player development. It just doesn't work that way, right? Because we can't pay everybody, so we have to develop from within. So you have to have 2 systems operating at the same time, player development, and you've got to have the ability to pay the players. But somebody's got to demand player development from the players, from the coaches. That's the head coach's job. But when the head coach is looking at a piece of paper like this, he's not walking down the hall saying, hey, I want to play this guy. I want to give this guy some reps. He's too busy worried about ski. It's not enough. It is an article. I haven't been able to quite figure it out how to write it. But it's the balance between how much strategy should you put in a leader and how much leadership. Baking's a formula business, right? So when you go to bake a cake, you have to be precise. Leadership is a little bit of a give and take. It's like cooking. But I think what's happened is we have shifted the balance in the National Football Leagues too far to strategy and not enough towards leadership. And to me, if I were running the Bears, I'm going towards leadership, because to manage the cap and to be effective, you need to have as much leadership to develop talent as strategy.
That's well put. And first off, Caleb, that bill is going to come up in a couple of years, so he's going to suck a lot of the cap. Now, think about that. So you have to prepare for that. And secondly, you're talking leadership. Can we admit that there were 2 leadership or coaching wins in Week 13? One was McVay and the Rams in New Orleans. They had no business winning that. They played horribly, still won. That's coaching. Harbaugh in Atlanta, that was a coaching win. And you pick those coaching wins up throughout the year. It's important. Structure.
And Sean Payton taking the points Monday night. Everybody said you can't, go for the touchdown, and he ends up finding a way to win the game. And so, look, I think you can't, that's the point that I think we're missing here, right? I say this all the time about players. You can't overpay for a great player. Well, let me say something else. You can't overpay for a great coach. Sean Payton's worth every nickel they're paying him. You're right. I mean, meanwhile, Shane Steichen's not worth all the money that they're paying Shane Steichen almost $10 million a year. You're paying Harbaugh 13. Who would you rather have? You're overpaying Steichen. You're underpaying Harbaugh, right? It's the same thing. The Bears are going to go out and hire somebody, whoever they hire Thomas Brown, pay him $8 million, $9 million, $10 million a year. You could have had Harbaugh for 12. It's the same thing. That's the decisions you have to make, right? If I pay a little bit more, I get greatness. If I overpay for good, what do I get? I'm probably looking for a coach. It's like what's going to happen in college football, right? One team says this right tackle who plays for them in college. He's a very average player, right? But because of NIL, he's going to go out there and get $500,000, $600,000 from some school. And I said to the coach, why would you pay that? Here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to spend a lot of money and still have a need at that position. It's like Gardner Minshew. The Raiders signed Gardner Minshew, pay him $15 million. We still need a quarterback. I just wasted $15 million.
Well, speaking of the Raiders, the Bears should be concerned because we know the players love Thomas Brown. We know they're going to galvanize around him. And that's what happened with Antonio Pierce, where the players ran that coaching search. So be careful, Bears. That's all we're saying. All right. When we come back here, GM Shuffle, we've got injury news. San Francisco is one of them. Pittsburgh as well. And the Eagles. Michael wrote a great article. Fly, Eagles, fly. It's the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
GM Shuffle, Week 14, NFL, 6 teams on bye. Michael Lombardi, I'm Patrick Maher. Hope you're doing well. Okay, let's talk. We just talked about the Bears. The interim's going to be their coach, of course. Eberflus out 4-8. They head to San Francisco, who are 5-7. So San Francisco, this is fascinating. McCaffrey's going to be out for 6 weeks. Mason on the IR as well. Shanahan, the organization, kind of a freebie. Super Bowl last year. Okay, we tossed this year. But there are questions about the 49ers moving forward. State of the union on the 49ers, Michael.
Well, they've got some critical decisions moving up, and I think the main one is if you're in San Francisco and you're Kyle Shanahan, you love Brock Purdy, but now the love has to translate into money, right? It's one thing to love a player. It's will you love it? Will you still love this player when I pay him $35 million? See, I think that's the question mark. If you were the Giants and you said to John Mara before he gave out the contract, you love Daniel Jones, but when do you start not loving Daniel Jones? What's the price hold that you can't? Because go back to what we said in the last block. I don't want to overpay for good. Okay. Brock Purdy's a really good player. Is he an elite player? No, we talked about this. He maximizes everything that he can get out of his body. No question. And he's an NFL starting quarterback. There's no question about that. But what's that price on that, right? What is that price? And then what's the alternative price to this, right? So it isn't just, let's just look at Brock Purdy through a straw. Let's look at this from the landscape of, if we pay him this, what does our team look like? If we pay him that, what does our team look like? And then what would be the alternative? If we could get Sam Darnold for X and Brock Purdy for Y, who's the better player? This is when it gets really hard, right? Because your bias is coming in, and it's just natural bias. It just you can't remove it. Brock Purdy's doesn't turn the ball over. Okay, let's really analyze this. Where are we with this whole thing? We get more athleticism if we re-sign Darnold. I mean, I'm using Darnold as an example because he's going to be a free agent. But I think that's the conversation, Patrick. And they've got so many injuries. They're going to need to have a great draft. They're going to need an influx of players because Debo's not the same guy, right? He's just not the same player. We see that. They're going to count on Brandon Ayuk to come back, and we all know when Ayuk comes back, he probably won't be the same player until week 8, 9, 10, 11 of the season. So it's going to take some time. So there's a lot of hard decisions that they have to make, and Kittle's getting up there in age. They don't have enough good defensive linemen. I mean, it's going to take a really good offseason. Not that it's not going to be not that you can't do it. I'm not saying that. But I think this is, by losing these many games and losing close games, what happens is a dose of reality gets splashed on your face. And I think Kyle won't have to sit there and say, well, we were this close, let's give it one more go. I think they'll rip the Band-Aid off. Not that they're going to start over again, but I think they'll be more objective in terms of their player evaluations.
What the hell happened with Deontay Johnson? The Ravens taking on the Eagles, and Deontay Johnson, apparently, remember, traded for him from Carolina. He was suspended for refusing to enter the game against the Eagles. That's Eric DeCosta, your boy, talking about suspending Deontay Johnson.
How is he this? Forget suspended.
Right.
He's got to go. Right? I mean, look, here's one of the rules I would write down, okay? And I said this when the 76ers, in their brilliance, traded with Danny Ainge to get Markelle Fultz. I mean, when Danny Ainge wants to trade with you, you should probably think twice about it, right? Same thing. When Mike Tomlin gets rid of a player, when Mike Tomlin says goodbye to somebody, and that's been a starter. Okay, he said goodbye to Robert Spillane, who was a good player for him, but he didn't want to pay him what he wanted to make, so the Raiders got a good player. But that wasn't a character reason why he got rid of him. When he got rid of Antonio Brown, what happened, right? The Raiders fell for that one, cost him. When Mike gets rid of a player, there's a reason. There's a reason. Mm-hmm. And so for me, this guy, from everything that I've heard about in Pittsburgh, he was not good for the locker room. Let me be polite and say it that way. Then he goes down to Carolina, who needs receivers. Like, they need receivers more than anything. Like, they need receivers more than I need a diet. And what happens, right? They get rid of them. So, like, wait a minute.
They got rid of him on the cheap, too.
They got rid of the cheap. They gave him away. Like, wait a minute. What's wrong with now? In fairness to Baltimore's probably saying to themselves, our culture's so good here. He'll come in here and we'll be able to rehabilitate him. No question. We all do that. We all believe it. We did it in New England, right? With, trade for Albert Haynes, for all that. But at the point when the player shows you who he is, believe him. They need to fire his ass. He's not going to help them one way. The one-game suspension isn't going to change this guy. I mean, being traded from Pittsburgh to Carolina didn't change him. Being traded from Carolina to Baltimore didn't change it. I'm going to break some shattering news here. Nothing's going to change him.
And is he really going to have that much of an impact? I think,
of course, he's not
all made. Correct. So it's not
the aggravation that you put up with this guy for what you're getting back. It's not worth it. And this is one of those where I bet you, and I don't know this for a fact, so this is speculation. I'll bet you Harbaugh's saying, get him out of here. And I'll bet DeCosta's saying, well, we need him. Like, I think this is the classic case of, I don't want to embarrass ourselves knowing we gave away a draft pick. Look, there is nothing wrong with admitting you made a mistake. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, you can't make too many of them, you get fired. But there's nothing wrong with it. Look, we took a chance on the guy. Obviously, we didn't do our homework. We didn't realize this guy is bad in the locker room. He's really bad in the locker room. We got to get him the hell out of here. But we made a mistake.
Hey, real quick on the Jags. So Trevor Lawrence, after the hit, he's on IR. He's also expected to have surgery to repair a significant AC joint in his left shoulder. So Mac Jones is going to start this weekend, of course. The question about the Jags, they're going to be looking for a new head coach. Are you hearing anything about that as far as potential replacements in Jacksonville? If there is to be one.
Did you see Urban Meyer's Twitter appearance? Did you see this? Oh,
no, what do you do?
Urban Meyer, just out of the blue, Urban Meyer decides he's going to offer advice to Shah Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he basically takes an endorsement and says, go young, don't go old. Hire Ben Johnson, don't hire Bill Belichick. Now, here's the man. Like, what kind of self-awareness do you have to have when you release this video to the world that you're offering advice? Look, I'm no Doug Peterson fan as a head coach, but the guy still has a job. You're on Fox every week, right? We can speculate he's going to lose his job, but to go and give advice for the next hiring when the guy hasn't even been fired yet is ridiculous. And then let's add another layer to this conversation. Then you were down in Jacksonville. You thought they thought they gave you the keys to the kingdom. And they could, and after 12, 13 games, they sent your ass packing. And now you're going to offer advice? This is George Costanza opposite. I would do whatever he thinks I should do the opposite. Like, what kind of an ego must you have to think that somebody's going to listen to you? And when you write this, like, whose idea was this? Like, why? I get it if the job's open and you want to offer advice to Shah Khan, but why are you taking a shot at a coach who won 6 Super Bowls? Why are you taking a shot at him? What did he ever do to you? Obviously, there's something that happened there.
Well, Urban's calculated. He always has been, because I'm sure you saw it. He's taken out Doug Peterson. And he's taken out your boy Bill Bell. Also, Ryan Day, before the season started, he said that the talent Ohio State has may be the greatest of all time. And that was concerted because he wanted the pressure to be on Day. Of course, he used to coach at Ohio State, now Jacksonville. This is just what Herb does.
His ego's out of control. Like, seriously, if I was that bad in Jacksonville with all the authority, I wouldn't show my face again. I would be embarrassed to even talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, let alone offer advice to them. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's almost bizarre. So, I mean, look, the other thing about Jacksonville that just blew me away, and I had about 6 people in the league, we were talking about it, like Trent Baalke, here they are, they can't win a game. And everybody knows they're probably going to blow it up at the end of the year. Meanwhile, Baalke's given out these ridiculously high-level contracts to Walker Little, who the next coach may not want. Like, the next coach may not want him. And I'm sure he's under the disguise of, well, he's one of our better players. Every team's going to want him. You don't know that. Like, that shows you how dysfunctional they are down there. Like, that sends a horrible message. Wait a minute. Maybe Baalke is going to stay there. Maybe he will be the guy who hires the next coach. If that's the case, everybody in the league knows that's a hard job. Just call Jim Harbaugh on that. That's a hard job. Trent wants to run the team. Trent wants to coach the team. Trent wants to do all those things. It's really challenging. Why do you think the owner came out this summer and said it's the most talented team in the world? You think Shah Khan's been scouting them for a living? You think he got his projector out and started watching? Somebody told him that.
Urban. All of a sudden, the Cowboys look like a model franchise. They've won a couple straight. And here's a quote from Dak Prescott about his head coach, Mike McCarthy. Quote, "I believe in him wholeheartedly. I think he definitely deserves a chance, another contract, and a chance to coach this team. And here's the point, amongst more influence." I think he said that on purpose. He wants McCarthy more involved. You've said it. You've said it for a while now. You believe Mike McCarthy's coming back next year.
I think it only makes sense because the problem, again, we talked about it last episode. The Eagles solved their problems. If you're really honest and you're a Cowboy fan, you can hate Mike McCarthy all you want, but this team isn't his fault. He was saddled with no running back. He was saddled with no depth. Jerry, the general manager, did a bad job, and they missed on some draft picks with Macy Smith. And so it's really unfair to blame the coaches. It's either coaching, players, or scheme. And I think in this case, a lot of it is the players. They're just not good enough. I said it last year. I said last year they overachieved, right? Which would be a support of McCarthy when everybody said they underachieved. And now they got worse from that overachieving team, and they couldn't overachieve this year. And then Dak gets hurt. I think it's really look, Mike's coaching. Jerry can extend him why wouldn't Jerry extend him for 2 more years, right? And now Jerry's 84 years old. We'll try to repair the team this off. I mean, here's the thing that I know if I'm Jerry, Dak's going to play good for Mike. That's proven. The best year he's ever had in his life was playing for Mike. So why wouldn't I let that happen again?
Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys all of a sudden on a heater. All right. When we return, GM Shuffle, we're going to run the Week 14 NFL board, some good games. And we'll get to our DraftKings bet highlight coming up. And I'm going to force the big guy to give a pick on tonight's Thursday Night Football. I've got my Lions hosting the Packers, 3.5. Shot for the best number, 51 on the total. So we'll continue with the GM Shuffle. Week 14 in the NFL.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back to the GM Shuffle, presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Week 14, Michael Lombardi, NFL GM Shuffle. There's a couple of very interesting games. Let's do this, though, quickly, because you wrote about the Eagles. It feels like your boy Sirianni's been neutered a little bit. He got the buzz cut, and he's chilling. Fangio, you better get him a good Christmas gift, because that defense is ridiculous. Those kids up front. You said at vsin.com, the Birds are legit. They have a Super Bowl caliber team playing its best football at the best time. They can control the game with their defense, run the ball when they get into the red zone for touchdowns, and most of all, they can make explosive plays with their offense. The Eagles are going to be hosting the Carolina Panthers, who are surging right now. Let's first start, though, with the Eagles. You're calling them a Super Bowl team right now.
Well, they're healthy, right? I mean, Bryce Huff's on IR, but they can get him back. I mean, they've been able to stay healthy. They've had injuries. Devontae Smith, he's practiced all week this week. So they're healthy. Detroit's not. I think the winner of the Detroit game versus Philadelphia, if we get that playoff matchup, I think that's the Super Bowl winner. I really do. Now, it's always hard to beat Buffalo, especially indoors in New Orleans and a place like that. But I think that would be. Maybe Kansas City could do it. I just think, to me, these are two really good teams. And Philadelphia's in good shape. I mean, Philadelphia is in really good shape. Look at the Jordan Davis's body. Look at Jalen Carter's body. They're in good shape. They can play hard. And Vic's coached the hell out of them defensively. And I think they're going to be a hard team to beat moving forward as long as Barkley stays healthy. Look, the thing that cracks you up is Philadelphia is the number 1 rushing attempt team in the National Football League, and they're 32nd in passing attempts. You say, well, and we know they want to throw the ball, but we know the joystick loves to throw the ball, but he had to change what he did. I think they're good. And the only reason I favor them slightly over Detroit is because Detroit's got too many injuries. It'll be a great game. I mean, those teams, that'll be a war. And if I were a general manager in the league, I wouldn't look at how do I win my division. I would look at these two teams. How do I beat these two teams? And if Ryan Poles were paying attention, he would realize to beat Detroit, you have to have a really good offensive line. To beat Detroit, you better have a really good defensive line. To beat Philadelphia, you better be good in both areas. So I think that's the key. And I think you're going to have to do that. I think it'll be the key. One thing I want to say too, if Detroit loses, if you like Philly to have home field advantage, I would bet that before tonight. Because if they lose tonight, they have Buffalo coming up next week. Philly's got Carolina. Philly's going to have it pretty much easy. I have a hard time thinking Philly's not going to be able to control the game. So I think, to me, I would get on that. I would, if you think Philly, I would bet Philly Super Bowl odds like I indicated in the column, and I would bet Philly to have home field before tonight, because I think those numbers shift dramatically. The other number that I think will shift if Detroit loses is this Carolina game. It came back down to 12.5, and I think people think Philadelphia is going to take it lightly. But if Detroit loses, all of a sudden the Phillies locker room comes to life. And they're going to treat this game like you can't believe, and they won't take their foot off the gas.
Yeah, you can get a price right now on the Eagles to get that 1 seed. Michael said it perfectly. Bet it before tonight at plus, I think it was 240 last time I checked. We've got a revenge game in Minnesota. Your boy Kirk Cousins headed back to Minnesota. This is fascinating because Cousins, the 4 picks, each one was worse than me. That was about as ugly as it gets. Yeah. And he heads to the Vikings. This number, you said it during the break, was 5.5, jumped up to a key number of 6 with the Vikings laying it.
I don't understand it. And all week, Patrick, Wednesday I run my numbers, and all week I thought this number's out of balance. It should be more 3.5, 4. And when I ran my numbers said it should be 7. So it's coming to my number. And I just think, to me, this is a little bit where if Atlanta has anything in them, you got to play Atlanta here. But everybody, Minnesota's they won 3 straight road games. I thought Arizona was the play last week because I really believe this. When you play that many games on the road, people think you take for granted you're going to win at home. And it's so hard, right? Now, this will be an emotional game because Cousins coming back. Kevin O'Connell knows what Cousins likes, what he doesn't like, and then we know Brian Flores is going to come after him. And this offensive line for Atlanta is so overrated. It's been overrated for most of the time we talk about. I don't give a shit what Pro Football Focus grades them out to be. When they have to drop back pass protect, it's a problem. So I don't know. I don't love Atlanta's team. I was more impressed with how they played defense last week than ever before. I lean Atlanta here, even though the numbers are going the opposite direction. I'm getting a good number at 6. And when you're the home team, when you get 6 on the road, I think it's always a good number.
We got a good one on Sunday Night Football. Harbaugh, we talked about him earlier, and the Chargers are headed to the Chiefs. The Chiefs continue to win on those margins, and they're laying 4 hosting the Chargers.
It was 3.5, and it moved. I think, to me, I worry, can the Chargers have enough offense? They couldn't run the ball in Los Angeles against them. Herbert wasn't healthy. He played the whole game, but he wasn't healthy. I think, to me, when you watch that without having J.K. Dobbins, they couldn't run it going in there. Look, I think the key to this game is going to be, can Khalil Mack and Bosa really pressure these tackles? It'll be interesting to see if DJ Humphrey starts at left tackle. That's going to be the key component. Who's going to be the left tackle? And the right tackle, let's be clear. No one gets away with being lined up illegally more than Kansas City does. I mean, you could call Taylor for being in the backfield almost on every single play, right? You could be it, right? And, I know he's got a knee injury and all that, but I think, to me, those 2 tackles are the issue. And Andy's got to protect himself, and that's why he's very careful about how he attacks the opponent. Look, this team is 20th in the National Football League in yards per attempt passing with Patrick Mahomes. Think about that, Patrick. 20th yards per attempt. This is a horse and buggy team. They're not going to be explosive.
1 loss. It's a story. There are so many stories, whether it's Tomlin overachieving again, the 1-loss Chiefs with the point differential that's all-time low. Right. You could go on and on.
If the Chiefs, I mean, there's 2 games. They're in the last play of the game. That Denver kicks a field goal without it getting blocked, they win. And if Antonio Pierce, for whatever reason, doesn't decide to run an extra play, right, they still win. I don't understand it. How do you get this lucky? How do you get this lucky?
It's fascinating. It's a team. It's funny. They've won Super Bowls, plural. They're 11-1, and I feel awesome if I have an opportunity with my Lions against the Chiefs if we see them in February. Okay, quickly. The NFC West. All of a sudden, Seahawks at Cards. This is tremendous.
Yeah.
It's 2.5. I mean, Cardinals laying it, hosting the Seahawks.
And the last time they played, the Cards couldn't run the ball. Connor had 7 carries for 8 yards, so it was really challenging for them. When Arizona can't run in the ball, I think with Minnesota did this really well. They keep Murray in the pocket, make him play quarterback. Seattle did the same thing the week before when they played him. But I love Arizona. I think Petzik has done a really good job as the offensive coordinator of the Cardinals. I think he's been really good trying to protect an offensive line that's not very good. They get these receivers who you don't even know of, and they make plays. This is the season for Arizona. They're on a 2-game losing streak after their bye. They've lost to Seattle. They've lost in Minnesota. They come home. I like Arizona here quite a bit. I think Arizona is the better team. I'm not sure how good Seattle is. But look, give Seattle credit. Since their bye week and since they made the changes at linebacker, they have really improved defensively.
I know you and Millie have Netflix, but if your membership has run up, I can give you my password because Aaron Rodgers has a 3-part series coming up. I mean, can you seriously with this go? Anyway.
And the Lions moved towards them. I don't know. Lions moving towards them again. I mean, I don't understand it. Why does everybody keep betting the Jets? The line's down to 5.5.
Open 6.5. Jets at Miami. We were joking with Elliot during the break. The Jets have been bet all year, and it just unconscionably bet all year. So here it is, 6.5 down to 5.5 with Miami laying it, and you're going to take the Dolphins here.
I have to. I mean, this is the Dolphins at their finest, right? They have feasted on the Patriots and the Jets in the East. I mean, Mike McDaniel has feasted on, and he feasts on bad teams. I mean, you have to take them. They're playing at home. The Jets are not playing very well. You know, I think the defense for Miami is better than what they showed up in Green Bay. I really do. I think they're playing. They don't give up big plays, and Aaron Rodgers can't throw the ball down the field, and they can't make an explosive play. And so I think this is a game Miami wins. I'm going to take it in the Russo contest for sure. And if it's at 5.5, why wouldn't I? I mean, why? Who's betting the Jets?
DraftKings bet highlight. But let me ask you this. Do you believe what we're hearing, and it's kind of been whispered for more than a year now with McDaniel and the idea that locker room is soft or the team is soft?
Oh, I definitely believe it. Completely. I think him and Zach Taylor could win the award for softest of the year. They should get it. I think if I were the president of Charmin, I would be contemplating whether I want Zach Taylor or Mike McDaniel as my spokesman. I really would. Like, I got to get somebody from the NFL to promote Charmin. And I think those two would qualify. It would be a toss-up. I mean, they're soft as can be. Let's face it. You know, but he gets away with it with his quirky personality. You know, he doesn't really, and he's great on the interviews coming out of halftime, and, he's spinning records left and right. I mean, he should be, probably he would win it over Zach Taylor to be the spokesman for Charmin, but they're soft as hell. I don't think their players are soft. I think he coaches soft. And look, Vic Fangio is going to be he's going to be the defense coordinator. He's going to be assistant coach of the year, and they couldn't wait to run him out of Miami. And when he left town, they killed all the players came out against him. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that happened? Because Mike let it happen. Because Mike doesn't coach hard.
DraftKings bet highlight Miami. Michael says lay the 5.5. Presented by DraftKings. DraftKings. The crown is yours. Yeah, Fangio couldn't wait to get out of town either because the offense being coached soft and the defense was getting coached hard by Fangio. And he's like, dude, this is not, our ideology's not lining up here.
It's the same problem Lou Anarumo's having. Everybody wants to fire Lou. I don't care who you put in as a defense coordinator of Cincinnati, as long as you got Charmin over there coaching them. I mean, that team's going to be soft. They don't practice. They don't have a running game. Why do good teams run the ball and stop the run, and bad teams can't run the ball and can't stop the run? There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, and it sits into the head coaching. So if I'm the president of Charmin, it's a tough decision, but I'm going to go with Mike McDaniel.
Big Daddy, I love you, but I hope your Packers lose tonight, Thursday night. Michael, enjoy the game.
Thank you, Patrick. You too.